What if I could share with you the worst day of my professional life
Without fear of judgment or ridicule,
and without loss of respect?
could we learn together from my experience?
CaseMatters, a podcast series created for Australian dental practitioners, intends to do just that, to create a shared experience where all points of view are explored to help empower safer practice. Hello, my name's Dr. Annalene Weston, dental legal consultant at Dental Protection, and I'm going to guide you through today's case entitled, I Always Knew My Dentist Was Shady. It is a regrettable fact that we cannot control the way in which patients perceive us, as the message we believe we're transmitting does not always equate to or sometimes even remotely relate to the message that they receive. Once a patient has formed a firm view that we are wrong, they'll often share this belief with others, whether it be through social media or through the escalation of their complaint to a critical third party, such as the regulator. In matters such as this, we can find the patient questioning the ethical and moral base of a practitioner, and we wonder, is there perhaps a kernel of truth in their position? And how will we know if this is the case or not? Many people were involved in this specific matter, and there were some conflicting views and opinions. But which view is correct? All of them, or just some of them? And is there such a thing as the right point of view in this at all? Or could it perhaps be that everyone is a little bit right and a little bit wrong? We'll hear from the people involved and also look at the final outcome to see what lessons can be learned. Let's begin by asking Dr. Miles to tell us a little bit about himself and his practice.
I have been a general dentist for many years, and I've been lucky enough to own the practice in which I work for the last 20. It's been really rewarding to build the practice up and treat generations of patients and their families, and I'm so grateful for the career I have. Naturally, I can't do this alone, and I have a long-standing and incredibly supportive staff behind me. Up until recently, I had a husband and wife associate team working alongside me, who had been with me for around 15 years, but they've moved on to pastures new, so now I needed to recruit. I've taken on a recent graduate who I'm mentoring, and also an OHT with adult scope. If I'm honest, I hadn't ever really turned my mind to employing an OHT or a hygienist in the past, as I always thought a dentist would be more profitable in the chair. But when I started recruiting, it quickly became apparent that I was going to struggle to find someone who was a good fit for the practice. Then Miss Kaur came along and everything just clicked. The staff love her, and she can do far more than I thought an OHT could. It's all been a bit of a relief really, as while my previous associates were great, they ran their own books almost like a separate business, and we never really saw each other's patients unless the other was on leave. This meant that when they left, it was the equivalent of a tsunami of new patients to get to know and take care of. Miss Kaur has helped share that burden and has flowed into the gap for those patients who prefer a female practitioner.
A successful team is a blessing. However, people's lives change and teams change too. Do you think the current makeup of Dr. Miles's team is better or worse than he had before? What do you think the strengths and weaknesses of his new team could be? Do you see any problems on the horizon? And if you do, how would you manage them? Now let's meet Miss Kaur to hear her point of view.
I'm really lucky to have graduated at a time when open scope of practice had become normal for OHTs, and it lets me have such a full role. I'm really dedicated to prevention and maintenance, and Dr. Miles has such a stable patient base that I'm able to focus on a long-term care rather than jumping from emergency to emergency and just putting out fires. He doesn't expect me to just treat children or only clean teeth too, but he lets me work to the fullness of my scope, which I really enjoy, as I didn't want to descale. He is such an honorable man, and the staff have been really welcoming.
As you would anticipate, it took nearly a full year for all of the recalls from the previous associates to go through the practice, and Mr. Marshall had initially ignored his recall reminder texts, as he was unsure if he wanted to continue to attend now his trusted practitioner had left. Unable to find another practice as conveniently situated, he begrudgingly returned, although he had his reservations.
I was really happy with my last dentist. I saw her for years, and I'm a bit annoyed that she has left, to be honest. as I don't like the idea of having to start again with someone who doesn't know my mouth. I'm not sure about Dr. Miles either. I've seen him around town, and there's something about him that rubs me up the wrong way. Probably his Tesla and the personalised plates. It all feels a bit much to me. But I'm going to have to start with someone new anyway, so I may as well see the new female dentist that he has working with him now, as I do prefer to see someone with a gentler touch.
Mr. Marshall called to schedule an appointment with Miss Kaur and dutifully attended for his scheduled checkup. Lily at front office signed him in and requested he complete a new medical history form.
And so the paperwork begins. I've been coming here for years, and I told her so. Complete waste of my time.
Seriously, I remember this man from before. He's so sketchy, and I hadn't missed him, that's for sure. I noticed he'd turned up like a bad penny, which was just so typical. I hope he's not going to be snarky about Miss Kaur being an OHT, or that she may not be able to provide all of his treatment that he needs. Oh well, I'm not going to tell him. I know I'm supposed to, but they don't pay me enough to get shouted at for no reason.
Miss Kaur came to collect Mr. Marshall from reception and seated him in the chair. It is important to know that she wore a name badge that clearly stated oral health therapist under her name. It is equally as important to know that while Mr. Marshall read the badge, the words themselves meant nothing to him. Miss Kaur undertook a full oral examination, including bite wings, and identified 3 heavily restored molar teeth that she felt would likely benefit from a crown. She explained this to Mr. Marshall and took periapical radiographs of those teeth with his consent.
3 crowns. That's okay. The last woman told me the same, and I upgraded my health fund already for it, so I may as well get some benefit from it, particularly as we are moving towards the end of the year.
I talked through what crowns were and why they were indicated, and completed Mr. Marshall's examination and scaling. I advised him he needed to rebook and handed him over to Lily.
I scheduled Mr. Marshall in for a consult with Dr. Miles, which is what I've been advised to do, as Miss Kaur cannot treatment plan crowns under her scope of practice. He asked about what a crown cost and how much his health fund would pay, and so I ran a high caps estimate for a crown through for him. So he knew how much out of pocket would be and left it there.
This is a lot more economical than I was expecting for 3 crowns, and it's good that they can get me in next week to get on with it.
So far, so good it seems, but knowing that Mr. Marshall's going to complain, or this wouldn't be the subject of a Case Matters podcast, who do you think the complaint is going to be about? And why? Mr. Marshall attended for what he believed to be the Crown appointment. Lily signed him in, and 15 minutes after his allotted appointment time, one of the dental assistants called him through. To his surprise, Dr. Miles was the dentist waiting in the surgery. Dr. Miles greeted Mr. Marshall, not really thinking anything of his demeanour, which was quite aggressive, as he had heard from Lily that Mr. Marshall could be quite a tricky character. He proceeded to examine the teeth and x-rays and agreed with Miss Kaur that the teeth would benefit from crowns. Sitting Mr. Marshall up in the chair, he proceeded to talk through the treatment, risks and warnings. Mr. Marshall listened, but Dr. Miles could see he was somewhat agitated. He asked Mr. Marshall if he had any questions, to which he replied no, and then asked him to rebook with Lily for 2 out of the 3 crowns on the 1-6 and 4-6, as they were on the same side and in occlusion. The 3-7 was to be held over until the next year. Mr. Marshall dutifully went out to see Lily to schedule the 2 appointments for preparation and insertion, and was gobsmacked to be charged a fee for a consultation.
Are you kidding? First of all, I thought I was seeing my new dentist, and there was no explanation when I saw that man. Then, I have already paid once. I have never had to be seen twice before like this. I thought I was getting my crowns today, only to be told it takes 2 appointments, that I can't have it started today, and I can only have 2. Well, I'm not paying, simple as that. He can't take a bite out of my health fund just because it's at the end of the year and there is money on there. What a rot.
Lily sensibly waived the 014 consultation fee as she accepted that Mr. Marshall had not been fully informed to the reason for his attendance with Dr. Miles or the fees that may be incurred for it. Mr. Marshall was insistent on seeing Miss Kaur for the Crown appointments.
Here we go. I explained using the phrasing I'd been taught by Dr. Miles that Miss Kaur is an OHT, and as such, she is restricted from doing crowns by the dental board. And Mr. Marshall would be seeing Dr. Miles. I thought he was going to blow a blood vessel, but he nodded and left without rescheduling. Good riddance, I say.
Mr. Marshall was seething. He'd liked Miss Kaur, but was very concerned to hear that the dental board had restricted her practice, presuming the worst, that she had done something wrong. He really didn't like Dr. Miles at all, so he called around some other practices for an estimate. Now he had the code for a crown. You may have picked up on Lily's clumsy language about Miss Kaur, and also that she had not set Mr. Marshall's expectations on the first day, largely due to the fear of an emotional outburst from him. But did you pick up on the third? Unfortunately, Lily had taken Mr. Marshall's request for the estimate of a crown quite literally and had only run through the high caps for one crown, the 3-7, not the 3 he had treatment planned, and not even for the 2 planned to be done on the first appointment. The fact she felt so intimidated by Mr. Marshall had limbically hijacked her, had led to an error on her part, which is commonplace occurrence when your mind is stressed. Unsurprisingly then, Mr. Marshall was unable to find another practice who could come near the estimate he'd been given for what he understood to be 3 crowns. As there was a huge variance in fees quoted and Mr. Marshall interpreted the 3-7 written on his high caps estimate to mean 3 crowns, it did not even occur to him he'd need to triple the fee, nor that his health fund contribution may vary between crowns. Reluctantly, he scheduled a Crown appointment with Dr. Miles based on finances, not trust or faith in Dr. Miles as a clinician. The preparation was uneventful, the temporaries placed, and Mr. Marshall went to reception to pay his deposit. To his horror, the overall amount was double what he was expecting to pay, and yet his health fund contribution was not. Lily attempted to explain that the estimate was for 1 crown and that the practice had no control over health fund contributions, but Mr. Marshall was not prepared to listen. Dr. Miles heard raised voices and came out to the waiting room. He too was unable to calm Mr. Marshall, who had built up quite the head of steam. Sensibly, Dr. Miles suggested that Mr. Marshall set out his concerns in writing as the conversation was not travelling well, and Mr. Marshall left.
I'll set my concerns down in writing, all right. Down in writing to APRA. I always knew my dentist was shady, and this confirms it. He's a fraudster, and I'm not going to put up with it. I've downloaded the APRA complaint form and added the details, but there isn't enough room in the space allocated to put everything I want to say down. So I'm going to have to attach a letter too. To whom it may concern, I am deeply troubled by the conduct of Dr. Peter Miles and respectfully request he be investigated as a matter of urgency for dishonesty and fraudulent behaviour. As a long-term patient of the practice, I attended to see the new dentist, Miss Kaur, for a checkup and clean. She told me I needed 3 crowns, which confirmed what my previous dentist had said. What she did not tell me, however, is that she had restrictions on her practice, so was barred from providing the treatment. And I think she should need to advise patients if she is on a limited licence, so patients can make an informed decision for their safety. Dr. Miles then saw me to tell me again that I needed the crowns prescribed by Miss Kaur and the previous dentist, and attempted to charge me a $100 consultation fee. When I declined to pay this, his receptionist Lily said they would only charge my health fund. To me, this doesn't negate the fraudulence of this double payment, and committing insurance fraud like this surely increases the premiums for the everyday Australian, so is not to be encouraged. Next, an inaccurate estimate was given to me to lull me into thinking the fees were more reasonable than what they were. I only uncovered the full amount after my teeth had been drilled back for 2 crowns. I believe this is because I now have no choice but to pay for the crowns, and it is essentially a mix of deception and coercion. When I realised my concerns with Dr. Miles's receptionist Lily, who incidentally is rude and unfriendly. She ignored my concerns and proceeded to lie and manipulate the facts. She even blamed my health fund. Dr. Miles then came to reception and rather than resolve the matter, apologise, or even attempt to see things from my point of view, he asked me to leave. I now have 2 damaged teeth with fragile temporary crowns on them, with no means to pay for the final treatment. I have been misled, lied to, and I believe the practice has also attempted to coerce me into committing fraud. I would like these matters investigated as a matter of urgency and anticipate Dr. Miles will be subjected to the full weight of the law, perhaps even resulting in a restricted practice certificate like Miss Kaur.
Do you think any elements of this complaint are fair, or do you feel this is wholly unreasonable? And what do you think AHPRA are going to do? Well, the first thing they did was to issue a notification to both Dr. Miles and Miss Kaur.
I couldn't believe it when the opera officer rang me to tell me I had a complaint coming. And I was even more shocked when I saw I had to respond to allegations of holding out as a dentist and of practicing outside of my scope of practice.
My notification was equally as shocking. I have been accused of deceptive practice, and I need to defend my practice processes, including whether the right person is treatment planning crowns and also my consent process. I feel sick to my stomach.
Both clinicians contacted Dental Protection for assistance with their submissions, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague and fellow dental legal consultant, Dr. Kiran Keshwara, to talk through the allegations and how we assisted.
Thanks, Annalie. AHPRA are required to assess all complaints which are termed as notifications which are made to them, and these are assessed through the lens of protecting the public. So while we know what's happened, and we know that this is all a big misunderstanding, AHPRA need all the relevant information to assess the matter and form their own views. Consequently, AHPRA provide the practitioners involved with the opportunity to respond and assess this alongside the patient's complaint and also a copy of the clinical records, and then make their determination. Taking each of our colleagues in turn, Ms. Kaur had to set out her qualifications and role within the practice, reflecting on her scope and whether she was working within it, which she easily was able to evidence that she was doing. The holding out issue is a harder one to address, as it's difficult to evidence that you didn't pretend to be something that you're not. However, the practice webpage clearly showed Ms. Kaur's qualification, as did her name badge, and we provided this information to AHPRA for their assessment. Dr. Miles, on the other hand, had a higher hurdle to jump, as he had to overarchingly respond to include his practice model and Lily's behaviour, as well as his involvement with Mr. Marshall's treatment. AHPRA have in recent times become increasingly focused on the treatment planning aspect of dentistry and the use of treatment coordinators, as naturally, treatment cannot be planned by anyone other than a registrant in the appropriate division. Dr. Miles had to set out how he worked with Ms. Kaur and also the steps he had made in the practice to address the behaviour of his staff. Sensibly, he enrolled the whole practice in a communications course to support everyone in better managing difficult conversations, as he understood that as the principal, he was responsible for the behaviour of all of his staff. I'll let Dr. Miles tell you about his perspective.
I was really shocked to receive this complaint. Not because of the patient, he and I never gelled, but the nature of the complaint really shocked me. I was disappointed that Lily had not explained things in the way she'd been trained, but I do understand this is on me, not on her, and probably related to her confidence to set everything out, particularly with tricky patients, and I've worked this through with her. The practice communication course was actually great, although it did cost us all a day of our work. I think with hindsight it was money well spent, as not only did we identify weaknesses we could learn from, but we actually had a really good laugh together. I didn't realise that Miss Kaur, being an OHT, could be taken out of context, but I do understand that from Mr. Marshall's perspective, he was charged twice for the same thing. This is something I have considered greatly, and I guess that the best thing would be if I don't charge for a second consultation, as after all, I'm getting the fee for the crowns. That might have helped here, so I wrote that to AHPRA. I don't know what's going to happen. We haven't done all the things Mr. Marshall said, but I have tried as well as I can to understand his point of view.
Let's see what AHPRA thought.
As you would likely know, the core role of AHPRA is to protect the public by regulating registered dental practitioners in Australia, with one of the functions to manage complaints about practitioners' health, conduct or performance. On review of the complaint received about Miss Kaur, we noted that the first allegation was that she was holding herself out to be a dentist rather than an oral health therapist, which is the division she is registered in. And further to this, that she was providing treatment outside of her scope of practice. The national law protects certain titles and provides that only registered practitioners from those divisions may utilise those titles, with misuse of a title potentially leading to prosecution or disciplinary action. Consequently, we asked for a clarification from Miss Kaur surrounding this complaint to find out how she was presenting herself to her patients, both online and in person. Happily, Miss Kaur was able to provide supporting evidence to address this issue, and additionally provided information and evidenced reflection on her scope of practice and how she was working within the parameters of this in her day-to-day practice as part of her team. Further to this, we then had to look towards the notification in terms of Dr. Miles' part, involving both his conduct as well as his staff. To do this, the Dental Board utilises the Code of Conduct, which sets out the expectations placed upon all dental practitioners on their behaviours and professionalism. At the core, it appears that a large issue in this case relates to communication and some of the pitfalls that can occur when practitioners are involved in shared patient care. Working within a team enhances a patient's care, ensuring that patients have the access to the most appropriate practitioner to provide the relevant care. It does, however, have the potential for patients to unwittingly fall through the cracks if a considered and well thought out approach is not taken. This is why the Code of Conduct specifically steps through the expectations relating to shared patient care, which is standard practice within many dental teams. The Code steps out expectations when working collaboratively, and to quote, "This is intended to ensure that you understand your role as well as the role of other team members, have clear delineation of responsibilities, including a recognised team leader who can coordinate, communicate effectively throughout the team or practitioners, and this includes the front office staff, inform patients about the role of team members and other practitioners, and be clear who has ultimate responsibility for coordinating the patient's care." You may be able to see that this specific point has contributed greatly in this situation and how things have become unstuck. And lastly, to act as a positive role model for team members, supporting students and practitioners in receiving supervision as well as others within the team. On reviewing the patient's complaint and Dr. Miles' responses, including his reflection and recent targeted education for both himself as well as the team at large, we were satisfied that Dr. Miles had addressed the concerns raised within the notification. Whilst it is always disappointing that a patient has not had the experience they were anticipating, we were satisfied that the steps taken ensured that this situation would not happen again for another patient. Consequently, a finding of no further action was deemed to be appropriate in this situation, and this was reported back to both practitioners as well as the notifier.
A pleasing outcome for both practitioners, but what about for Mr. Marshall? Naturally, he's likely to be unhappy that his point of view was not borne out by the regulator, but what about the more pressing concern he would have, that of the two temporary crowns? I'll ask Kieran to address this point.
I think we would all agree that the relationship between Mr. Marshall and Dr. Miles would have deteriorated sufficiently as a result of this complaint, and that it would not be in either of their best interests for Dr. Miles to complete the treatment for Mr. Marshall. Consequently, in accordance with the obligations within the AHPRA Shared Code of Conduct, Dr. Miles offered to assist Mr. Marshall in finding another practitioner, including offering to transfer all the records to assist in the patient's continuity of care. It is important to note here that Dr. Miles appropriately did not keep any documentation relating to the complaint made to AHPRA, in Mr. Marshall's treatment notes. So this meant that his records could be transferred without fear that his future treatment could or would be prejudiced. Mr. Marshall initially declined all assistance. However, he quickly realized that very few practices were willing to take on a patient who had temporary crowns in place without some background understanding of the teeth and their treatment. Ultimately, Dr. Miles referred Mr. Marshall to a local specialist prosthodontist who completed the treatment, incidentally at a fee significantly higher than that quoted by Dr. Miles. Mr. Marshall contacted Dr. Miles, requesting that he pay for the uplifted specialist crown fees, which Dr. Miles declined. He did, however, return Mr. Marshall's deposit to him to assist with his future treatment costs and to help draw a line under the matter altogether.
Thank you, Kieran, and I suspect our listeners are going to have mixed feelings about how this matter ends, although I applaud Dr. Miles for being so professional and pragmatic, particularly under these difficult circumstances. If you are listening and you do have a strong view on this case, we'd love to hear it, so please do reach out to us through our regular channels. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Case Matters. What will you take away from this case? We'd love to hear. The cases discussed in Case Matters are presented as an educational aid to dental protection members and to act as a risk management tool. They're based on issues arising in dental protection cases in Australia, and some facts have been altered to preserve confidentiality. If you like dental protection podcasts and you'd like to hear more, please subscribe and leave a review.